Hey, good morning, everyone. It is Friday, and you know what that means. It is time for another AMA Friday with the managing directors here at Make a Difference. I'm Donnie in studio, the Mad Evolution studio, and today's going to be a fantastic show because in studio, I have with me George Wentz, managing director, and Steve Youngdahl, managing director.
Good to see you, Donnie.
Hello, gentlemen. Happy Friday to you. We're also being joined via wonderful technology by Walt Teeter is also joining us. How are you, Walt?
Oh, very well. Thanks, Donnie.
Great. Thanks for coming in this Friday. And we have the wonderful honor, gentlemen, of being joined as well by Crypty Girl today. So, Crypty, how are you doing?
Hey, gentlemen. Doing great. I'm ready for another fantastic AMA.
Us too. Well, thanks for coming in and helping us out with this today. So today's topic is actually growing wealth while saving the planet. I can't think of two better things that should be connected in. It's like the perfect marriage, right? Which we all know about. So
absolutely.
So yeah, I'll go ahead and pass the floor over to you guys and if you have questions, of course, make sure that you're typing them out. Any comments or questions you have, Crypty Girl's going to be handling that. The managing directors will be answering all of those, and I'll just try to stay out of the way for the most part. That's my job.
I think we should address the perfect marriage before we get started here.
Well, you go right ahead. I'm sure everyone's wondering about that.
Donnie married my daughter over my son-in-law, and it was a fantastic affair. It was just absolutely wonderful, and he's a great addition to not only the Mad family, but my family too.
Well, it's an honor to be a part of your family, Steve. Thank you for welcoming me so beautifully. I think the most of you guys, and all we're missing is Fawn here today, but the three of us are going to do our best to hold down the fort while she's gone. So
Absolutely.
It's not going to be easy. We're going to try, though.
We'll get there.
I would just like to say you're still on probation for the first year, so don't get too comfortable.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what we're talking about.
I'm on edge. I'm on edge.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Just keep them, All right.
Well, back to our topic, growing wealth while saving the planet, right? Why don't you guys tell us how Make a Difference is actually making this happen in a world where a lot of people are probably very skeptical about how such a thing could be possible when we've been forced to make difficult choices and maybe ones that aren't necessarily financially feasible for the average person when it comes to, making good decisions in the environment.
I would like to propose that in answering these questions, that the managing directors engage in paper, rock, scissors to see who goes first.
I like that.
You like that idea?
Yes.
Okay. Now why don't we let Walt start with this answer? What do you say, Walt?
All right. I think part of it revolves around the structuring of transactions and having the focus that we do on the entire value chain. And so we, in energy, which is what our focus is, you have, I'd say, three different areas primarily. One is the production of energy, both primary energy and utility energy, such as electricity. One is the transmission of that energy, so from the production area to the consumption area. And the third is the consumption itself. And so what we look at it as MAD is it's each step of the way. How do we produce more efficiently? How do we transmit the energy more efficiently? And how do we enable the more efficient consumption of energy? One of the key areas, and let me give a great example, is in a data center project we're working on, where we're looking at putting forward an extremely low carbon solution. And so what that involves is obviously using some renewables with some battery storage, but then the ultimate backup to provide reliability to the off-takers and the users of having some fossil generation as well. But what that puts us in the position is, instead of a normal situation where you may use the fossil generation for 60, 70% of the time, by having the integrated system, we can reduce that down to 5 or 10 or 15% of the time. So right off the bat, our reductions are looking at 85, 90%. So not only is that really good for the environment, it's good financially. It helps, for example, to avoid carbon taxes, to avoid the cost and the difficulty of going through a whole permitting process for high emissions. And so we try to save from the environment as well as economically along every step of the process, which provides a positive outcome for our investors, for our counterparties, whether they be suppliers or the ultimate consumers of the energy, and onward throughout the value chain. So we view this as a very sustainable process and practice, which begins immediately. So we're not waiting 5 or 10 years for new technologies to emerge. We're jumping in right away and using and putting together existing technologies more efficiently.
So I think it's important to take a step back and look at why did we start this whole thing? We started this because we were tired of watching people who had never been in the energy business, who had never produced one electron in their entire life, had never transmitted an electron, sitting in Davos and talking about how they were going to save the world. And of course, we've been doing this for, nigh on 40 years. And so we're watching and we're going, you know what? These probably have great intentions, but they don't know anything. And so we assembled here at MAD a team of experts. You just heard Walt, and you can tell he knows exactly what he's talking about. So we assembled probably the leading experts in each area, and we created a roadmap for how we get to zero carbon electricity production and transmission and zero carbon transportation. Our roadmap gets us from A to Z. Unlike anyone else, I have not seen anyone put forward a comprehensive plan the way that our team did. So then what's the problem? The problem is that we really disrupt the status quo. And that is not a good thing for the status quo. And unfortunately, the status quo consists of Wall Street and major global corporations and really honestly a segment of the government. So how do we get this done? We've got to take it directly to the people. That's why we're talking to you. That's why we're having these AMAs. And how do you get on board so that you can see what we've put together creates a good deal of positive upside, because what we focus on is free market. We're not relying on subsidies. We're creating things that solve the problem, but also make money while they do it. So we're coming directly to you. We're tokenizing our equity, only the second company in the world to ever do that, and the first green energy company to ever do that. And we're taking the problem to the people. How do we solve the global warming issue? We're giving you the roadmap. We're giving you the vehicle. We're giving you the way to get it done. And we're offering you to be part of the solution. Actually, if we can get the general public engaged, and we can get you guys excited about being part of the answer to this difficult question, then we can solve the problem, and we solve it. The folks, the people out there, we take control. And that's what's missing in our country and our world today. We're sitting back and we're allowing governments and corporations, and we're just sitting here not doing anything. That's not going to work anymore. We've got to be the answer to the problem, and MAD lets you do that. That's why we started it. Now, our projects absolutely make money, and they go out to you because you actually own it.
I want to put a finer point on what George just said. And for anyone that doesn't know, George is the visionary that came up with the whole vision of make a difference. And and he reached out to Walt, myself, and gave us the vision. And he actually had me when he said it's the free market answer to all the problems that he just talked about. And that's the key. So the free market means we're going to do this and make a profit. And I think that's a good thing, quite frankly. And the beauty about the system that we have set up with going directly to the people is you don't have to go through Wall Street where they're going to give you some crumbs on the table when all the big guys are getting rich. We're actually taking this directly to the folks so they can share in it. And I believe that's a key to the whole, creating wealth while making a greener planet at the same time.
Absolutely. And the nice thing about our projects is that it is when we go in and we do things, most of the time when we build, for example, when we build a plant to produce hydrogen. When we build that plant, we already know that we can sell that hydrogen and we know what we can sell it for. Why is hydrogen cool? Hydrogen is the next carbon-free transportation fuel. We can use it in hydrogen fuel cells to create electricity to run a car so that we don't need batteries, which we like. We like we like eliminating unnecessary components to transportation systems. When we can do that, we like to do that. It takes a lot of mining to create batteries. It takes a lot of weight in your car to have batteries. So if we could come up with a solution like a hydrogen fuel cell that minimizes the use of batteries, doesn't eliminate it, but minimizes it, then that's a very good thing. We're not carting around, a ton of batteries, using all that energy to do so unnecessarily. We're also using a carbon-free transportation fuel like hydrogen. So when we enter into the, the problem with hydrogen right now is there's just not, either it's made using coal, which puts a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, or it just doesn't exist, and therefore it's not readily available. We're addressing that problem by creating hydrogen plants. So when we do that, we know what the sale price is of that hydrogen when we go in. So we know that when we construct it, there's a certain amount of upside profit that goes to you as we build it and the revenues come in. We know that we can create a long-term stream of revenue and profit that can then be distributed to the people who invest in MAD. So we know that we can do this, and the structure of the way that we do our infrastructure projects like hydrogen plants, we can pencil it out ahead of time. That's unlike most businesses where they haven't actually sold what they're going to produce before they build the plant. We've sold what we're going to produce in most cases before we build the plant.
Perhaps we should have Walt talk about that. He's done more of those types of contracts than anyone else on the planet.
Absolutely.
I mean, what is the market for green hydrogen?
Well, right now, essentially due to regulation, particularly in the European Union, but also growing commitments, say from Korea and Japan, states like California, there's almost an unlimited appetite for, well, what's generally referred to as green hydrogen, but also extremely low carbon hydrogen. So essentially, if it can be produced, it can be sold. And what we're seeing is a lot of the utility and industrial customers are really sort of craving the opportunity to get access to the extremely low carbon hydrogen. It's just not an abundant supply. And the markets are constrained on availability. So this is a product slate that can easily be placed into the marketplace, typically under long-term contracts where it's called a take or pay, meaning you take it or you pay for it as the off-taker. And that really helps to underpin the plants that we're looking to make. And that's a foundation of a lot of the transition type energy. So when the market in the 1960s and 70s moved from a crude oil based market for power generation to a natural gas market, what underpinned all of those original contracts was this take or pay concept. And we're really seeing that hydrogen is adopting that model. And I think that's going to be the model of the future for at least the next half decade as more liquid hydrogen markets become available. But right now it's in its infancy, and it relies upon and is dependent on these take or pay contracts, which are really forthcoming in the current environment.
Okay. Maybe Crypti's got a question.
Yeah, we have a bunch of questions coming in the chat. Good job, guys. So Long Live Hex and Matt McDonald had a similar question. So Matt's saying he sees the problem. He feels like his hands are tied. How can he personally make a difference?
Well, I think there's a number of ways, really. One is, of course, for every citizen, every investor to educate themselves to a certain extent. In other words, do some reading on it, understand what the challenges are, what the opportunities are. And a lot of times that takes some digging. You just watching the news doesn't really give you the information you need to make an informed decision. But with some digging, the information's out there. And of course, backing MAD or ESG funds like us as we seek to go into the marketplace, as we pick specific projects, we vet them internally. And that's really what helps in having this long-term background in the energy space, is the ability to rather quickly and very thoroughly vet projects to see which ones make sense, what's the low-hanging fruit, as it were, and where's the biggest bang for our buck. In other words, how can we make the biggest impact, both on a positive financial basis for our investors, but also on an environmentally positive basis for the world?
Yeah, the short answer to that question is take a look at MAD. We've created a vehicle for you to do it. You want to get involved, we'd love to have you get involved. The way you get involved, and we've opened this up to basically a wide swath of the public, is we've tokenized our security. If you have a wallet, you can actually purchase our tokenized ownership in our company, and you can become part of the MAD team. That's what we've created this for. Become part of the MAD team, make a difference. That's our name, make a difference. Get involved, and when you do that, you can know that you are actively involved in reducing greenhouse gases, because everything we do does that. You know that you're actively involved in our efforts to retire the worst offending sources of energy, like coal-fired power plants, like people burning bunker fuel to create energy. All of this is going on throughout the world today, and we're targeting those very, very offending, polluting plants to replace them with something cleaner, healthier, and making money. So that's the way that works. So if you want to get involved in making a difference, why don't you just join Make a Difference?
I mean, a great example here, George, to complement your thoughts. I was reading an extensive article today on the changes in generation mix between, I think it was 2019 and 2021, particularly in Asia. So Asia is really the center of economic growth and therefore power demand in the world. And by far, the fastest growing source of generation was thermal. Thermal meaning heat producing to make electricity. Of course, the component which is the largest portion of thermal is coal. So we can see even over the last 2 years with COVID and the intense focus on reformation and energy transition, coal is still absolutely the dominant form of new generation in Asia, whether it's China or India, Indian subcontinent, throughout the Asia Pacific region. We do have to take into account that's the driver for global emissions at the moment.
All right.
Yeah, you know,
so
Go ahead, Griffin.
another question from our chat is, this grand vision seems like it requires billions of dollars to pull off. How realistic is this really to fund by the public? And follow up, how much money does it take to get these projects off the ground and producing revenue? Whoever wants to take that.
So you're right. Infrastructure projects do take a lot of money. But the key to building effective infrastructure projects is knowing what you're doing in standing them up, designing the financial model, locating them where they need to be located, then getting whatever you're producing sold, right? So once you have that sold, it's basically, imagine if you were building a mall, and before you ever started putting the construction components of that mall together, digging dirt, pouring concrete, laying the foundation, etc., you had already leased every square inch of that mall. If you've done that, then the financing for that mall is very, very easy, because it's the tenants that are the revenue stream providing the financing for the construction, right? No one builds a house out, well, maybe some people do, but very few people build a house without going to a bank and getting a mortgage. So you put 10% down, 20% down, and then you finance 80%, right? Well, infrastructure projects are done the same way. And so what we're doing when we are attacking the greenhouse gas problem, we're using those same financing vehicles that we have used for, honestly, for many, many years in many, many projects. One of the reasons that the Make a Difference team was assembled is because we have a great deal of expertise in the legal contracts that support all of these things, We have people like Walt, who is an expert in getting the contracts, and I use the term the tenants that in the example of the mall. In ours, it's what are we producing? We're producing green hydrogen. Okay, we sell it before we start. So therefore, once we have, like if we sell, imagine if you sold green hydrogen, a long-term contract, guaranteed by France, or guaranteed by Germany, or guaranteed by massive Fortune 500 companies. Don't you think that Apple would want to run its facilities in Cupertino using carbon-free electricity so that they could say they have and get a lot of PR off of that? That's actually extremely valuable. If we produce these types of things, we can go to them beforehand and get that sold. Therefore, the financing of it is a lot easier. So we do need to raise money. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking to you. Yes, indeed. But we're not gonna build a $30 billion facility without a whole lot of institutional financing to get it done. That's what we do. That's called leverage. It makes the whole thing work. So don't think that this is something that A, we've not done before, or B, requires billions and billions of dollars to get it done. Over the course of the next 10 years, will we raise and invest a lot of money to make all of these things go? Absolutely, we will. But we'll also be leveraging those funds significantly with institutional investors that look for just this type of investment to get it done. So when you come in and you become a member of the MAD team, we're going to pair you up with some pretty heavy institutional investors to make the end goal come to pass.
So that's what they call the equity piece then.
Well, we would be the equity piece,
Right.
and then we would have the financing piece.
Yeah. So our
you might
limited
think of
partners
it
are
as
part of the equity piece.
They might be. You might look at it as you're part of the down payment, right? Another way to look at it.
Yeah. That's a good one.
And I think one of the most exciting things about Matt is the fact that a lot of these projects are seeking you gentlemen out and looking for your expertise and actually coming to you to figure out a way to make these projects better. So in a sense, we're not going and finding them; they're coming into us to make these things happen. So
Yeah, we get presented with a project, and then we take a look at it. We bring our team of experts to bear. So you see us, and you're probably tired of that, but you see the three of us.
Never.
We have engineers, we have really smart financial people, we have wizards of spreadsheets, we've got all these things going on behind the scenes. So once a project comes to us, we analyze it, we take a look at it, we say, okay, what can we do? How can we improve this? And almost every time we do. I mean, we haven't seen a project yet where we couldn't bring it to market faster, more effectively, more profitably. That's our expertise. That's what we do. So MAD partners with people that are already looking at doing things. We're not starting most things. Some things we start from scratch, but that's not our general business model. Our general business model is that we've been inundated over the years by people saying, look, I got this fantastic idea. And then we help them bring it to fruition. So with MAD, what we did is we took that same skill set that we've been using for all these years, and we just decided that one of the missing components was a formal structure to stand side by side with those people who have great ideas and bring our expertise and our financing capacity to the table. Our financing capacity, we opened that up to you. So you invest in MAD. We prudently and wisely take your funds that you've invested in us, and we partner with various projects, and we make them go more effectively, more quickly, and more profitably. That's our whole deal. That's what we do.
So some of the questions I'm going to come back to that are older, since we're already on the subject of money. What type of annual returns are possible for being an LP long term? And I believe that means liquidity provider.
That's a limited partner.
Oh, sorry, limited partner.
Yeah,
I'm getting my acronyms mixed up.
there you go.
There's several of them.
There's a lot of them out there. Generally, we target relatively robust returns. If a project that we're asked to get involved in doesn't hit robust returns, then we're going to probably not do it, or we're going to restructure it so that it does. A lot of times we get projects that come in and we look at a way that we can do it better. make it go better, make it make more money, make it faster. All those things go into the annual returns. But generally, we're targeting in excess of 15%. Now, I talk to crypto people, and they go, 15%, my goodness, my whole portfolio went up 3 times in the last month. Well, that's wonderful for crypto, and I don't know anything else that can do that. The only thing I will say is that crypto can be relatively volatile. And if if I had a lot of crypto, what I would want to do is I would want to hedge, and I would want to take a percentage of that, and I would want to invest it in something that was a long-term steady return. So then in your portfolio, you sort of have a base, right? Mm-hmm. I know I'm not dropping below this amount that I put into these long-term green energy projects that just keep producing money year over year over year, right? Instead of the rocket ship followed by the hold on for dear life, right? You get the rocket ship, hold on for dear life, rocket ship, hold on for dear life. Now okay, at least when I hit that bottom of hold on for dear life, I'm somewhere around 15% from that that tokenized equity that I bought from MAD.
And helping the environment while you do it too,
No
which
doubt.
is the bonus.
Yeah.
Right.
What type of investment can you compare this to?
Right.
Because it's pretty high level. Like, this is far beyond cryptocurrency.
Well, all right, paper, rock, scissors. Who wants
Can I take a shot at that one? And then I want to give it to Walt, because I think Walt
Okay.
might have something to say too.
Okay.
And because actually Walt's going to be a good follow-up to what I'm going to say. What you have, what the opportunity is that I'll start at the other end of the spectrum. Let's say you went to Wall Street and say, you know what, I want to buy stock in a company that produces energy, and they've gone out and accumulated assets. They've purchased assets that are, but they've already been developed. They've already been built. They bought them from someone who built them, let's call this at the wholesale structure, and then sold it to them at the retail structure. So your returns are far, far less. The risk is less because it's what they call seasoned. It's been built, it's been generating income, and they buy that, and they're happy to take much less in the way of returns. Whereas, we're the ones that are building those projects, and we're building them, and they have much greater returns, because the value is in what we produce. And so we're giving people an opportunity to come in at that level, not at the second tier level where those assets have been sold and accumulated into a portfolio. Because let's face it, energy is a solid commodity. Everybody needs it. And if you're able to get in at the ground floor level with where the value is originally created, it's just much better. I'm sure Walt could put a finer point on that.
Sorry, Walt, but I just had a thought. The question is, what could we compare this to? And really incredible wealth is often made when there's a sea change from one type of financial or structure to another. One type of technology to another, right? So when the first oil well was drilled in Pennsylvania and Standard Oil started, there was a massive amount of wealth that's still out there today, created by that shift from whale oil, right? What really saved the whales? Standard Oil saved the whales, right? We didn't need the whale oil anymore to make light or to do whatever. And so we got this petroleum out of the ground. And that was a massive technological shift. And there was major wealth there made, right? When steel came into mass production and Carnegie created, why do we have Carnegie Hall, right? So you could fast forward to then the information age, right? Anybody ever heard of Bill Gates? I think he has a shekel or two to rub together, right? And anybody ever heard of Bezos, right? So what does this compare to? What we're doing is we are the cutting edge, of the shift between fossil fuel use, think of the whales, over to non-fossil fuel use. Think of standing next to Standard Oil when they drilled that well in Pennsylvania back, in the late 1800s, right? So these types of shifts are where you really make a killing if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
What could we compare this to? Now, obviously, we can't guarantee anything, and we have to do all the disclaimers. But how would you have liked to have been in the room with Bill Gates when he was starting Microsoft and be part of that original 7-person team, right? How would you have liked to have been somebody, taking used books off the shelves at Amazon when that was Amazon's business model before they took over retail globally, right? I mean, that would have been pretty cool. How would you have liked to have been next to Jobs at Apple when they came up with the Apple as opposed to the DOS, right? So these massive shifts, they create a lot of wealth, and it's a lot of opportunity. We are at that shifting point in the energy sector, and the problem is that the people have been left out. And that's what we're allowing. We're allowing the people to get in on that and opening it up. That's what other people haven't done. That's what's different about our model.
Well, you want to put a cherry on top of that?
Sure. So I think a good example would be, I know George had used the retail example earlier, a shopping mall. I sort of look at this as, let's say you own a 10 apartment building. And so out of your 10 apartments, you do a 10-year lease with, say, 6 billionaires, and the other 4 are multimillionaires. You're going to get paid, or you've got a really, really high probability of getting paid every month for that 10 years by each one of those tenants. And that gives you the comfort to proceed with your project, meaning that apartment building, and at the same time, being able to lever it up, because the financial institutions can see, well, hey, that's a really good base that company has. And so that's what we're looking at. Is we know we're going into the energy transition field. We've picked specific projects, specific geographical locations, specific supply and offtake. And then by moving ahead in that field, we're looking to minimize our risk, to check the boxes as we go on the engineering, on the permitting, on the financing, on the offtake, and put together this package that we have a very high degree of confidence in moving ahead with. And that's that is our focus today. And we're getting ready to execute on some of the early transactions right now.
That's wonderful. And I'd also like to point out that the MAD token will be an uncorrelated asset because when you compare it to the rest of cryptocurrencies, because it's backed by real world energy assets and green tech. So a lot of cryptocurrencies don't have anything backing it except for math and code regulating it, but this is actually backed by something tangible. So that would help uncorrelate it from the rest of the crypto market.
Absolutely.
And this is the importance of what Walt was talking about with the take or pay contract. So there's lingo that we use. So I'll try to back up just a touch. Walt talks about off-takers. Off-takers are the people who buy whatever we're making. If we are making, really low carbon liquid natural gas to replace coal, which is a huge benefit to the environment, the people that agree to buy that long-term usually enter into a 20-year contract, and it's what's called a take or pay contract. So when you hear off-taker, think buyer, right? It's just whoever buys. So the take or pay aspect of it is whether you even receive delivery of it, right? You've got to pay for it. So just imagine buying something from Amazon, right? I'm going to get my usual Nespresso coffee things, right, that we go through at my house insanely. And I'm going to buy them from Amazon. And Amazon doesn't deliver them, but I still have to pay. That is what the buyers of our products agree to do in these 20-year-long take or pay contracts. Now, how cool is that? I don't deliver it, you don't want it, but you still have to pay me. That's why we enter into contracts. Walt was saying a bunch of billionaires and millionaires. We enter into contracts with massive companies or actually state-backed entities. So countries, think of countries, right?
Wow.
And well, you got to have it, right? In Europe, they are mandating into law that cars run on hydrogen. That is now what Europe has put into law. The only problem is what? There is no hydrogen. So, we may as well legislate that we're going to produce all our energy with pixie dust, right? Someone's got to go out there and make that pixie dust. In this instance, someone's got to go out and make that hydrogen. The problem is it doesn't exist. Well, you should tell the story about the fellow that you talked to in Germany.
Well, yes, and this was some discussions where essentially we'd gone through and we'd explained how we're able to produce extremely low carbon hydrogen and how we're able to deliver that extremely low carbon hydrogen. And it was the only business meeting of my life where the counterparty at the end of the meeting said, "Hey, I love you guys," meaning, bring the volumes here. We need it. We want to buy it. We want to put in place a long-term contract. And that's really that's the heart of the matter. And that's the trade-off between the buyer and seller is it's a long-term agreement whereby we as the seller agree to produce and make available for delivery the product. And the buyer agrees to take that product and put it into the marketplace. And if they're not able to sell it, to pay us for that product. And so that really does create that long-term guaranteed revenue stream, which enables the construction and the operation, and then the further development of the MAD mission. So we don't stop at one of these assets or one of these programs. We go and systematically replicate success again and again.
That's where you get the carbon reduction. That's where you get the greenhouse gas reduction is we take the model and we duplicate it. Hydrogen, 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 right?
Yes.
What's cool about this? You know what? You don't need to plug in a hydrogen fuel cell, right? What does that mean? That means we don't need what's known as base power electricity to charge batteries every night. Why is charging batteries every night a problem? Because solar power, this is a surprise to many, but solar power only works when the sun's up. Everybody drives their cars home at night and plugs them in at 6 o'clock, right when the sun is going down, right? And there's just no solar power to do it. So how do we do it? How do we do it carbon free? The answer is transportation is better done through the use of hydrogen, green hydrogen, carbon-free hydrogen, through the use of hydrogen fuel cells. The infrastructure is just now coming out to do that. That's why I compare it to the shift between people going out into the sea to harvest whales for their oil to people being onshore, drilling down into the surface of the earth to get petroleum out. The shift that we're talking about right now is just as dramatic and the opportunity is just as great.
Mm-hmm. So, gentlemen, take a moment, think about price predictions. If you want to go there, what prices do you think are possible for the MAD token in 5 to 10 years? And just remember, guys, this is not financial advice.
Great job, Crypty Girl.
And it's also there's also whatever we think is these are predictions. These are not guarantees. The truth is 5 to 10 years. No one has a crystal ball quite that clear, and so what we're saying here is what we hope and what we think, and we're banking on it. We've put all of our efforts and our lives into this, so clearly we believe that there would be a lot of appreciation in those tokens. So when if you guys have ever heard of Bernie Madoff, Bernie Madoff was out there saying 12% return, and people were lining up. It was crazy. He didn't have it. We do. I don't want to compare us to Bernie Madoff. I'm just saying that a 12% return was considered so dramatic that people in New York were lining up, to give Bernie their money to make that 12% return happen. So if you owned a piece of ownership interest in a company that was returning 15%, 18%. When we pencil out our long-term projects, they're often coming in at the 18% level, right? The stock on a company that returns 18% annually, I think it would do very, very, very well. So right now, people that are buying this tokenized equity in MAD are getting in at absolutely the ground floor. As we bring on, we're very quickly bringing on some next generation data centers to clean up the whole data center. Data centers are one of the dirtiest operations on the planet. We're partnered with a company that is rolling out really the coolest data centers there are. We're going to kick those off in the next months, right? So we'll start to see revenue in at that time. Our hydroelectric dams throughout the country, they're operating, right? So we start to see all these things coming in. The more money that we are distributing out to our limited partners, then the greater return it is on that ownership interest, that tokenized security, then the more valuable it is. So it's very difficult to predict, but I'm certainly hoping that the value of that token goes up dramatically as we bring more and more and more and more assets and more operating projects and more high-end tech to support those. Every time we add something, it creates more value in that token.
Well, and I think as we proceed and we have a limited supply of tokens, and as we use existing cash flow to build the business, it's self-fulfilling as far as high return projects beget additional high return projects. So the value is accretive to those token holders. And I think as Kripti pointed out earlier, not only is it value accretive, but there's a scarcity of supply, and there's a concrete cash flow associated with those tokens. It's not purely on a speculative or a scarcity of supply basis. There's underlying revenue that an investor can see in those tokens.
So we're going to go back to some of our older questions. Will MAD run into political obstacles that will keep the projects from happening?
I think I'd like to address this. There's always political obstacles in any project. It doesn't almost matter whatever project you want to pick that's going to be impactful in the world, there's someone who's negatively impacted. Yet at the same time, what we look to do is to obviously minimize impacts, which minimizes the scope for regulation to slow us down, but also to look at projects that are the most achievable. So in other words, what can we accomplish quickly in the next 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months that is cash flow positive and also impactful to the environment? A great example that the data center providers are looking at a 40% reduction or 45% reduction in power consumption. That is an enormous improvement environmentally immediately. And so those are the type of really high value projects that we're targeting.
Yeah,
How
great
we looking,
answer.
Kripti girl? You got another one there for us?
Yeah, I was just sifting through them. Just a general update on the projects that we're working on right now.
Well, my goodness. I'll talk about one of our early projects, a series of hydroelectric dams that we've partnered with a company called Hydroland, 26 megawatts of green hydroelectric carbon-free power being put out into the grid. 1 megawatt, just for reference, in a temperate area like North Carolina may power about 1,000 homes. Up in Norway, where it's super cold in the winter, 1 megawatt may heat about 100 homes. So you get the idea of what a megawatt does. we have partnered with a company, and we're assembling a series of small hydroelectric river-run dams throughout the United States that are then putting green, carbon-free base power, which means constantly available 24/7 dispatchable power. That's the definition of base power, as opposed to solar and windmills, which windmills only work when the wind blows, and solar only works when the sun shines. So those are variable, right? Those are variable sources. Ours, we generally like to focus on base power because ultimately it's cheaper to the consumer if the grid works on base power. It's very costly for the grid to deliver variable sources of power. So anyway, that's a cool project that we really like. We are also working on, Walt, would you like to talk about some of the other projects, or Steve? I'm talking too much.
Sure.
Steve,
So
It's very unusual that George talks this much. So I think we'll go ahead and Well, go ahead.
Sure. What I would add as well is, so far we've talked a bit about projects in the developed world, but we're also very focused on implementing these advanced technological solutions in the developing world. And so in the developing world, obviously everyone aspires to a high lifestyle, whether that's constant use of phones, computers, air conditioning, refrigeration, heating, electric cars, all of the above. And so what we're looking to do, and it's an opportunity, is to implement these same solutions, these hybrid solutions, these extremely low carbon solutions into developing economies as well. The whole world now is becoming driven by data. So for example, in the US or in Europe, you may walk into a bank to do your banking. Well, in Africa, you probably do your banking on your phone. So that energy and the provision of energy, of clean water, of sewage treatment. I mean, when you look at it, the two things that have really saved more lives in the last 100 years is water treatment and sewage. I know it's not very glamorous, but those are also rather energy and electricity intensive activities that have an enormous impact on people's lives. And so when we look at projects, we look at the end-to-end impact. And it's incredibly impactful for a society to be able to transition, to have refrigeration at home. So therefore, you don't have to buy your food every day. You can keep it for some period of time. To have lights so that children can study at night, or reading, or all the advanced techniques so a farmer can read about how to grow foods organically, or animal husbandry, things like that. So what we really look to do is to take this technology, not just apply it at home, but apply it globally and help implement best practices to, instead of putting a coal plant next to a dirty data center, if we can do a hybrid plant which has 95% lower emissions, feeding a data center with 40% lower consumption, well, we've really done a lot of good at that point. And we've done good for our investors as well.
So hybrid plants are in the plan coming in the future? They're in the pipeline?
Pipeline, there you go, yes.
Well, we're actually rolling
that.
that out now. I mean, that's now. That we are every single day working on a project along the lines of what Walt just described, which will make a huge difference in data center technology. So that's not something coming. That's here. That's exactly here and now, right at this point in time.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We've got others that are pretty cool. Yesterday, Biden set a goal of 50% of new U.S. vehicles to be electric by 2030 in order to tackle the climate crisis. Is this realistic? I'm reading a question.
You took Crypty Girl's job there.
I'm
That's what George
That's
said.
okay. You did great.
Well, I think it presents a number of challenges. One of the greatest challenges is essentially the vast majority of electric vehicles today rely on lithium-ion technology for the batteries. And simply putting aside the safety issues, that's another discussion. The availability of the raw materials to shift over to this level of production by 2030, I think really relies to a certain extent on a different way of storing that energy on those vehicles. From the estimates that we've seen, and one can go look at third-party studies by investment banks, market analysts, think tanks. I think when simultaneously Europe and the US and the developed countries in Asia are all looking to simultaneously switch over to electric vehicles, there's simply not enough lithium and cobalt and gallium and the rest of the materials required to make that switch. So in order for this to happen, it requires innovation in storage technology, which is one of the areas Matt is very much focused on.
Very nice. We're all caught up on our questions, guys. If you have any more questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Be sure to share the video with a couple of your friends too, so we can get more engagement on this super valuable information. Directors, if you guys have anything else you want to talk about, go ahead.
You know what? I want to ask George a question. This is a loaded question because I know he knows how to answer this. But I think it's really true. We've talked about the mission critical aspect of a data center, and it's a hybrid approach because you just simply cannot afford to have intermittent power. And that's what we keep talking about base load power, but in society, base load power actually saves lives, and we've seen this. I mean, we have real life examples of what happens when you have an intermittent supply that fails, and then you don't have a reliable source to be able to take over. And I mean, base load power, we probably bring it up every time we're talking about energy, because it sustains life. That's not a hyper, I'm not hyperbole. I mean, that's literally, it's just what happens. It happened in Texas.
Right. Right. The idea that you can consistently run your refrigeration, for example, right? If you're a diabetic and you have insulin, you keep it in your refrigerator, otherwise it goes bad. And so if you are an insulin dependent diabetic, then you have a major problem without power. I lived through Katrina in New Orleans, and we saw what happens when we are unable to air condition hospitals that are filled with the elderly, assisted living facilities and retirement homes, all those kinds of things, nursing homes. Power went out throughout, the southern part of Louisiana and the western part of Mississippi. When that storm hit, when that terrible hurricane hit, everything was shut down. We were immediately back into the pre-industrial world. I've never seen so many refrigerators out on the street. You could tell, the kind of food that you'd walk down the street and you'd see, oh, that guy's a Sub-Zero, must be a pretty wealthy dude, But, it was just awful. It was just terrible. And so that basically we have gotten to the point where our society only functions when we have electricity delivered all the time. When electricity is not delivered all the time and it goes out, we've seen these examples again and again. We've seen blackouts in New York City. What happens? Unfortunately, people feel free to go out in the street and start looting. We saw the breakdown in New Orleans. All the stores were broken into. I think everybody remembers those. It was a major disaster. So that, a lot of times people say, wow, you're talking about complicated stuff. You're talking about things that are hard for us to understand. But understand this. If we don't get this right and we don't do it the way that we are laying it out, supported by people who've devoted their lives to understanding it, people die. That's what happens. People die. You don't have water delivered to your home. You don't have electricity delivered to your home. So therefore you have no refrigeration. You can't use your phones. You can't speak to people. You are all of a sudden back into really the 1700s, So we're not capable of surviving in the 1700s. Certainly our cities are not capable of surviving in the 1700s without all of these things. We don't hunt and gather and harvest anymore. We go to the grocery store, So these are things, what we are doing is important. That's number one, from a life sustaining standpoint. It bothers me when I see politically motivated applications to power because of this, right? I've seen major power plants shut down for political reasons with no alternative. That means that people are going to die if you do that the wrong way. Senior citizens in Arizona in the summer cannot live without electric power to sustain them, period. So the other thing is that what happens if we don't get this right the way that we're proposing to do it? And what happens if people don't get on board and support this as the people supplying the answer? What's going to happen? All those talking heads in Davos are going to tell us what to do. So all of a sudden, a major aspect of our life is now controlled by a central government instead of being controlled by us. We need to be the answer because generally, in my opinion, I'll give you an example of a central government. Walt mentioned it earlier. The largest consumer of coal in the world, China. China is a command and control state. There are 7 people in the standing committee of the Politburo that make all the decisions for 1.4 billion people in that country. That's how that country works.
Wow.
We, on the other hand, that is how it works. We, on the other hand, we believe that we have rights. We believe that our rights are bestowed upon us by our Creator. That's the Declaration of Independence. So the rights reside with the people. Let's make those rights work. Let's assert those rights. Let's not sit back and be lazy. Let's not allow Davos talking heads to dictate the solution to us. We're very smart people. We can do this. We're offering the avenue, the vehicle to let you do it. That's the mission of MAD. So we're all about doing this in an ethical manner that saves lives, in an ethical manner that allows developing nations to get ahead, that brings clean, healthy, environmentally responsible energy and transportation to the world. And we're doing it through the free market, and we're doing it with the help of the people. And we're getting the people involved to be the solution to the problem. Let's not lay back and let somebody else dictate to us, guys. Let's get involved. Let's go do this thing because you know what? We can do it. We talk about this every single day.
Yeah.
We talk about it every single day. That's what drives us. That's what keeps us excited. That's why we're asking you to join the team.
Who
Now
else
that we're all
feels
ready to run
pumped?
through a brick wall, right?
I love it when George talks like that. It's like, yeah, let's be a self-sovereign people. Let's take
Absolutely.
back our responsibility and govern ourselves.
I somehow knew he would have an answer to that. I just had an inkling, and I was correct.
As you often are.
Johnny?
Great. Well, if there's nothing else out there, Crypty Girl, I think we can go ahead and wrap up this AMA episode. Managing Directors, George Wentz, Steve Youngdahl, and Walt Teeter, thank you all so much for joining us this Friday.
And
Crypty
Donnie
Girl,
Pettit,
that's me. Yeah.
that's the man.
But I also want to thank Crypty Girl for coming on and being with us on this episode. We can't do it without you, sweetie. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, that's very sexist. You can't say that. We're going to have to edit that out. We can't use sweetie.
I think we're
as-
live. It could be difficult.
I don't know. I've been told that sweetie is something you cannot say.
Well, you're a sweetie as well. So
Oh,
that eliminates that.
Very good.
I'm
But
not
thanks
a
most of all to the
fan.
people watching. I think, right? These are the people that can really help us make a difference. So be sure that you're tuning in with us on our AMAs every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern.
Yeah.
And hopefully our live streams will be coming back very soon on Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific or 10 a.m. Pacific. I think it's 10 a.m. actually Pacific, 1 Eastern. Make sure you're following us on our Instagram and our Twitter. Our handle is @MadTheFuture. And smash that like button if you enjoyed this. Share it with friends and family. Ring that subscribe bell and drop a comment. So thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.